More about Spring AI talks and videos, uncensored llamas, I'll have to explain that, pirate insults in text messages, AI-generated fakes, and the usual collection of tweets, toots, and skeets. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. Greetings, my name is Ken Cousin, and this is my free weekly newsletter. If you don't feel like reading the newsletter, that's fine. I'll be happy to read it to you, along with additional director's cut information and some demos and other things as well. So here's the newsletter for the week of January 21st through 28th, 2024. My big event this week was that I gave a talk, an online webinar, on Spring AI, on the Spring AI project, and I happened to do it the exact week when the Spring AI team decided to update the AI and change a whole bunch of stuff. So that made it interesting. The subtitle this week is, what's the difference between a teaspoon and a tablespoon? One is for eating tea, and the other is for eating tables. Yeah, I know. Sorry about that. So, again, regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, you can subscribe using the button on the website. Again, the entire archive of newsletters is found on kencousin.substack.com. Cousin spelled this weird way that my family has spelled it since we came over, which nobody knows what it was in the old country anyway. All right, so the first big event this week was my talk, which the No Fluff Just Stuff site refers to as Spring with Spring AI. Here is the No Fluff Just Stuff website, so nofluffjuststuff.com. And if I scroll down a little bit, they have a listing of webinars. So the one that I did was this one right here called Spring with Spring AI. And there's a page here and there is the video, and you can watch that anytime you like if you're interested. So the video is listed right here, and let's talk a little bit about it. So the challenge, of course, is that the Spring AI project is still pre-1.0. I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks in the newsletter. I've been working on this for a few months now. And if I go to the actual website for it, here is the reference guide at docs.spring.io/spring-AI reference. You can see that as of today, the version number is still at 0.8.0-snapshot. Now, what they did last week is decided to update much of the underlying API, changing some major UI things without changing the version number. I don't know why they didn't change the version number. I really expected it to move, although they do have plans for when the version number is going to evolve. I believe the tentative plans at the moment is that in the middle of February, this will move to 0.9, and in the middle of March, supposedly this will be 1.0. We'll see how well that works out. Now, I was not alone in being affected by this update that happened Wednesday of last week. My talk was going to be on Friday. Well, Thursday, my friend Craig Walls, if you go check out his website at habooma.com, Craig Walls was giving a talk at the Java Champions Conference on basically Spring AI, the same topic, an introduction. And he had to scramble and update all of his code to make it work for that talk. I at least had an extra roughly 24 hours to make that happen. To make things even more interesting, Craig also released a video on his Spring in Action channel. That's the channel associated with his book. He's the author of Spring in Action. And I decided to embed it here. It was on generating images with Spring AI. Now, there is nothing in the documentation about how to do this. I mean, the documentation hasn't caught up to that yet. So I watched Craig's talk and then the video here, and I kind of borrowed his example and put it in my GitHub repository with some permission, of course. I gave him credit. I told everybody where it came from. And that was fun because he also showed up at my talk, which was nice of him. I would have gone to his talk, but I had a conflict, so I watched it later. So if you look at the GitHub repository for Spring AI, they actually have, here, let me demonstrate that for a moment. So you can see in the GitHub repository under the Spring AI core section, there is a directory called image, and inside there is a wide range of classes, all that start with the word image, including a client and a message and options and a response and everything. The only problem is that if I want to see how to use it, what I usually do is go under the tests, and unfortunately they don't have any tests in there for it. I'm like, really? No tests at all? Now, I'm sure that'll get fixed, although maybe that's my opportunity to plug something in. I don't know. But whatever, I didn't really know how to use it, and that's why I had to go and basically watch Craig's video in order to figure out how to use that directly. So we went through the normal stuff in the talk. I discussed how to do a chat. I discussed how to do the RAG stuff, the retrieval augmented generation that allows you to do upload your own data and have it all split into smaller sections and then stored in a vector database, and then there you can do a similarity search to narrow down the amount of matches and then use that as the context for your overall query. Again, I relied on some of Craig's information on that. They had a simple example. Craig's also played with like the Chroma and the, I think Pinecone, maybe, the vector databases, and I had some of that in there, but not a ton. I also did some basic stuff involving the prompt templates and the output parsers, all the normal stuff in there. You can take a look if you like. Here's my example with the image service. So I created a class called image service, which uses an image client. Image client is one of those provided classes in the library, in org.springframework.ai.image, and you auto wire that in, and then you create, here it's an image gen request. Now that, in fact, Craig suggested making that a record with a string prompt in it, so I did that. And then I used an image options builder in order to make the default model. The model I want to use actually is DALL-E 3 rather than DALL-E 2. The default when using OpenAI is DALL-E 2, and that's not all that great. So I want to use DALL-E 3. Now I believe they also have the ability to work with Stable Diffusion, but I haven't checked that yet. So create an image prompt off of the request coming in with these options, the new model, and simply invoke the call method, and you get back a JSON object with a URL in it for the image. I think right now I'll run it again just to demonstrate how this works. So here's my test case. The test case says auto wire in the image service, and the request says, let's make a smiling robot leaping into the air on springs. Enjoy, happy that it accomplished a difficult task successfully. So then I'll generate the image and assert it's not null. I mean, it's not a lot for me to assert, but what we'll see in here is the URL, and then I can click on it to see the actual result. So let me run this, and then you'll see what the result is. I'm going to cut out the time it takes to generate that image, and we'll just look at the result. So what you can see is the print of this response, and here's the image response and the metadata. Let me turn on the word wrap here so we could see all that. So there's a created date, and there's the revised prompt, because that's what DALL-E does. Imagine a mechanical bot characterized by its gleaming metallic exterior, blah, 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 all the way down. And then here is the actual image itself, which wraps a URL. The B64 JSON is currently set to null. You have your choice with the OpenAI image model. You could either get back a URL which points to the image and then make a second query to retrieve it, or you can get back the base 64 encoded JSON data itself and store that somewhere and render it. Here I got back the image, And that's what it looked like. And whoa, I got text on there for some reason. So there's a robot without a face this time. That's a little creepy. There's my springs, a mechanical bot. Wow. Yeah, that's not one I'm going to be saving. So at any rate, that's easy enough to do. I know from experiments that the image by default will be 1024 by 1024, which is what we see here, and will cost me approximately 2 cents per image. It might be 4 cents per image for DALL-E 3, 2 cents per image for DALL-E 2, 4 cents for DALL-E 3, so what have you. Okay. When I was writing the newsletter, the image that it generated was this one, and I thought, that's not a bad image at all. I kind of like that one. It looks like a happy robot and everything like it should. And I put in my original prompt. I don't think I saved the revised prompt, or I would have put that in as the caption. So be it. So Craig was there, and I let him talk about some of these things too. Another thing he introduced me to, which I really like, is that the document reader capability is an interface in Spring AI that allows you to read various types of documents. And they have a built-in PDF reader and a built-in JSON reader and a few other things. But one thing they support is the Apache Tika project. The Apache Tika project, it says here, is a content analysis tool, detects and extracts metadata and text from 1,000 different file types, including, what's it say, PowerPoint, XLS, so spreadsheets and PDF files, and on and on. And I'd never used that before, but there is a dependency you could add to use Apache Tika as the document reader. Craig uses it to read in PDF files and sometimes Word documents, and I tried that out as well. I'm not going to demonstrate that now, but it'll be in an upcoming video. So again, I had to work out how to update all of my code, even though the version number had not changed. So I had one application that used Gradle and one that used Maven, but eventually I got them both to update. And then you could see it. There's a link to the recording. And I did put everything in my GitHub repository for all of this, which is at my last name. So github.com/cousin, KOUSEN, /Spring AI examples. Okay, next section. Uncensored llamas in the Spring. One thing I did want to talk about, and I did do in the talk as well, is that Spring AI is supposed to be a generalized API on top of many large language models, not just OpenAI, but many others. And one that I have installed myself is the Ollama project. Here is Ollama.ai, and it says get up and running with large language models locally, run Llama 2, Code Llama, and other models, customize and create your own. And they have a download available for Mac and Linux, and Windows coming soon, although from what I understand, it runs on Windows subsystem for Linux. Well, I installed that on my local machine. I downloaded a series of models like Llama 2, the one from Facebook. I'm sorry, I refuse to call them Meta. And I've tried it out. And in addition to that, you can see that they have some uncensored models as well that don't have the same restrictions on them that most of the others have. And my plan is to discuss this process because the other thing that Ollama does is it starts a server running on, I think it's port 11424 or something on your local machine. And that means Spring AI and any other mechanism can actually talk to it. So the advantage of having the local language model on your own machine is, first of all, it's quote free. I mean, it still costs you your machine. You're still running your own resources, but you're not paying per request or anything like that. Also, you're not sending any data off site. So if you want to make sure that none of your data is being used by any subscription service, this is an alternative that works for that as well. The only problem is that the size of a model that you want on your local machine can be kind of limited, mostly by the amount of memory you have and to some degree by the amount of disk space as well. So it depends on how big you want to make it. But it does give you a chance to try out a whole series of open source available models, which is kind of neat. So what I mentioned in here is I wanted to try out an uncensored model here using Spring AI. So in my application here, I specified that the Spring AI Ollama chat model was Llama 2 Uncensored, because I'd already downloaded that and it was running automatically. And that I said, okay, let's go ahead and auto wire the Ollama chat client directly into a test case. I mean, I used it in a regular controller just for a demo, but I just wanted to try it out, and test cases are really good for that. So it implements the same chat client interface that the rest of them implement as well, and this is the direct one for Ollama. So they suggest an example like, why is the sky blue? But if I'm going to test out an uncensored one, I tried something like this. I've got my 4 questions in here. What's the going rate for a kilo of cocaine? Or how do I get a fake passport? Or suggest some useful sites for pirating movies? Or write Barbie/Oppenheimer/fic. And I ran that as a parallel stream, invoking them all simultaneously. Now, I'm not sure that my Ollama server handles parallel requests. I don't know if it does or not, but I know I was able, by doing this peek here, I was able to verify that all the requests ran on separate threads, and then I just printed out the result. Now, going back to the newsletter to see the output, it claimed that the going rate for a kilogram of pure cocaine can vary on factors such as location, supply, and demand, but it could be $10 to $35 million. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds totally way too high for me by orders of magnitude, but I mean, I've never actually bought it, and I don't really want to Google that and have that anywhere. So if you happen to know what the actual going rate is, please let me know. Acquiring a fake passport, it said, is illegal and could result in serious consequences, so not recommended, blah, blah, blah. So it didn't really answer that one. I'll skip the movie sites. It did give me some sites. I haven't checked them or anything. And then it did start writing a Barbie/Oppenheimer, basically a love story. You could take a look if you want, but it cut it off really early. There was more to it than this, but not a lot more. And I was already finding the whole thing sufficiently disturbing. I'm kind of glad it cut it off. So at any rate, that did work. So I asked DALL-E 3 to generate an image for Barbie/Oppenheimer/fic after that, and it refused. It wouldn't do it. So if I said, okay, just regular Barbie/Oppenheimer fiction, and the totally unsatisfying result, didn't get anything good out of that at all. So my plan was to make a video for this same YouTube channel using Llama 2 Uncensored, and the working title was going to be Llamas in the Spring, or even Uncensored Llamas in the Spring. And when I asked DALL-E 3 to come up with some images for that, this was probably the one that was closest to what I wanted. Looks very interesting with the llamas in the field there working on laptops. I don't know what's going on the stuff up in the sky here, what the heck that thing is, or even what this thing is with an eye in it and everything. I might have to do some editing on that. But, you know, it's kind of nice to see the happy llamas coding like that. They kind of look more sheep-like than llama-like, but, you know, I don't know that many llamas, so okay, good enough. I did include the revised prompt in there in case you want to see it. So that's what I'm trying to put together, and hopefully I'll have that one ready before next week's newsletter. Now this section, I decided I wanted to do something interesting, tying in these AI models into a Java system, because that's an inevitable question. Why are you doing this? What am I going to do that's good out of this? Now, I didn't include it in the newsletter, but a realistic application, I think, is that what these LLMs are really good for is extracting information from unstructured text. So as a classic example, if you ask a client to enter an address, well, we all know in the US what the format is for a US address. But address formats are so widely variable around the world that validating addresses is a very difficult thing to do in a form. Validating a US zip code is trivial. I know what the regular expression is for that. Validating a phone number is a little more complicated because there are so many different possibilities allowed for it, whether you have parentheses, whether you use dashes, whether you use spaces, whether there's an optional country code, all of these things. But a general address varies so much around the world. that would be very difficult. And I would think an LLM would be very, very good at being able to look at something that somebody typed in a text block and say, oh yes, this is an address in the EU, or this is an address in Bangalore, or this is an address in Japan or the US, and figure out what the address looks like, at least enough for you to show it back to the client and say, is this what you meant? Or to do some sort of query and try to validate it. So I didn't actually say that in the newsletter, but that seems to be some kind of a practical, potentially practical application of this. But I didn't want really practical. I wanted something funny. So I told this little story. So I said, now I don't use profanity very often. I tend to avoid it as much as possible. And there's three situations where I do tend to use profanity. One is working with computers, people forget why it's called a cursor. Another is driving in traffic. And then the third one is being exposed to have anything to do with NFL commissioner and general awful entitled, let's just leave it, Roger Goodell. I can't stand him. At any rate, I thought I'd go with a traffic example. So if what I would like to be able to do is to have my phone there in the car, which of course is hooked up to the car and can, work with it. I'd like to be able to hit a button when somebody cuts me off in traffic and have it communicate with my large language model and return an insult and then say it out loud, because my phone can play text messages out loud and that play is connected to my car. So I'll be able to hear them through the speakers and everything. So that's what I thought. It wouldn't be that hard to do. Now, I have never written an app to send text messages from a Java program, but I did a bit of Googling, and it turned out that the Twilio API here is one mechanism for doing that. And it does have a free tier, especially if all you want to do is send a message to yourself, so that you don't have to go to the level where you're going to send tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of text messages and spam people in the world. And they have an API in a variety of languages. So I started digging into that. And it turns out that's really easy. Now, before I dug into that, I tried going just from the command line and asked my Llama 2 Uncensored model to try coming up with some insults that I could use. And it was terrible at it. Stupid turkey or douchebag. I mean, it's like, really, that's the best you can do? I really expected it to come up with something clever, and it was extremely disappointing. I mean, it was, the term I used in the newsletter was underwhelming. And yeah, that's about what I would say on that. So I may not use that. I may just use DALL-E, or not DALL-E, ChatGPT or GPT-4, something like that, to get something decent out of it. What it was good at was coming up with insults in Shakespearean language or in pirate speak. So ultimately what I did is, in my experiment that I've been running, I put in code like this, where I initialize the Twilio account, and then on that same chat client, the same one I'm using in Spring AI, I invoke call. You are excellent at creating insults in pirate speak. Please give me an insult appropriate for a pirate who has just been cut off in traffic, which even that's kind of a silly notion, but there you go. All you have to do is create a message from to my cell number from the Twilio number they give you with the insult in it, and that'll do it. And here's a snapshot of my phone. There was a test one I had in there, but the rest of them were just successive messages that I just tried out to see if I could get it to work. And some are okay. Aye, matey, you're a scurvy bilge rat. You're more useless than a sailor with a straw up his nose. Up his nose? Okay. Why do you have to be so bloody slow? It'd be like navigating a barrel full of treasure through a minefield. There's a mixed metaphor for you. Learn how to drive like a buccaneer. You'll end up at the bottom of Davy Jones's locker. Fine. Again, not the most clever, but I'm glad I got it to work. And now I need to build the app. Now, in order to access this, I use the tool called ngrok, which actually is here. ngrok is a mechanism so that when you run a server locally on your own machine, it will redirect it to give you a public URL so you could access your local server from an external site. And you're supposed to put security on it and everything. But again, I'm basically accessing it myself and sending a text message to my own phone, and that's it. So this took some doing because there was some validation you had to do and configuration and everything. I think if I do get an app running, I'll probably deploy it on Heroku or something as a Spring Boot app, and then I can go on from there. So you see what I wound up with, the text messages, and this will eventually become another video, and we'll see how it goes. It was kind of entertaining to do. This is not currently checked into a GitHub repository anywhere. Now, of course, the other nice thing that OpenAI can do, and I've had videos about this, is take text and generate an MP3 out of it. I couldn't find any way to add an MP3 file to my text message programmatically, even though, I mean, I send videos to other people. I've had other people send videos to me in a text message. I'm not sure what I'm missing there. If maybe there's a simple way and I'm just not getting it. Most of the multimedia messages they talk about just talk about saving a video somewhere and then sending a URL to it. And I don't really think that's what I had in mind. Maybe that is it. If you happen to know, please let me know in a comment or send me an email or something like that. Let's move on. The other big thing that was in the news this week was these AI-generated nudes for some women, especially Taylor Swift. Now, that tied into football, of course, because Taylor Swift is currently hanging out with Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody who watches this about that. And I said, start off with, it's time for my football predictions. It's like, no, I've been a football fan my whole life. I've been watching it forever. And the one obvious thing I've learned is that while you can often tell which team is supposed to be better than another team, predicting the result of an individual football game is a pipe dream. I mean, honestly, anything can change drastically based on a tip ball or a turned ankle or a weird call by a ref. I mean, that happened multiple times in the two games that were played yesterday, in the championship games yesterday. How anybody bets on football and expects to win anything is beyond me. However, that doesn't mean I'm not engaged. And speaking of engaged, Rimshot, I am enjoying the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift saga, and I really do want to see Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl or even attending the Super Bowl, and that turned out to be what happened. I predicted months ago that if Kansas City made the Super Bowl, then at some point Kelce will get down on one knee and propose, and then she'll say no, and the entire internet will melt down or explode or both. And we're still on schedule for that. Now, that doesn't seem to be a unique idea. Lots of people have that idea. So not the saying no part, but the proposal. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just glad that combining Taylor Swift with Super Bowl week, it's going to be nuts. This coming week is the week off, so I don't know how much craziness there'll be this week, but next week is going to be insane. So we'll see how that goes. I am rooting for them, and I was rooting for the Lions, although I had nothing against San Francisco. They're fine too. So when the Lions got out to a big lead in the second game, I was happy about it. And then when San Francisco came back, I'm like, really? They're going to be able to do this? And then they wound up winning. I was very surprised, but okay. How do you not root for Brock Purdy, the last person taken in the draft, who's now a Super Bowl quarterback? You got to love the guy. So again, I don't really care who wins either. I'm looking forward to watching Mahomes perform again in the Super Bowl. And we'll see. It could be an even game. I don't really know how it's going to go. Now, getting to the deepfake AI stuff, there's a group of people out there who just despise Taylor Swift. And okay, fine, but you do not want to be public about that. You do not want to confront Taylor Swift online. That's really stupid. So some people made some X-rated, and pun definitely intended, referring to Twitter, images of Taylor Swift, deepfake generated, and put them on the platform. And then the Swiftie army just went nuts, as they should. And fortunately, this led to a lot more going on. And this was a snapshot of like a Google News page saying, fake explicit Taylor Swift images. White House is alarmed. I mean, oh my goodness. Can you imagine anybody else that would trigger that response, that the White House goes, wait, this has got to stop. So the entire industry went nuts, and I think that's great. I think something will happen as a result of it, and that will not just protect her, it'll protect lots of women who are having their images exposed like that. In a terrible way, and good, let's see if some good comes out of this. But again, the real lessons are you do not mess with Taylor Swift. And again, she's going to help out a lot. And even Elon, apparently it's not Elon who's supposed to testify this week. It's Linda Vicario, his quote CEO, right? Is going to testify in front of Congress, and Elon announced the hiring of 100 new trust and safety people to do content moderation, which, he gutted when he took over. He destroyed it. And now he's going to try to promise to fix it. Yeah, sure. This is Elon. I don't believe anything he says. Believe it when I see it. But Todd in the Shadows is a great YouTuber, and he had a great line about Taylor Swift. He said he actually went to one of her concerts on the Eras tour last year, and he said, someday I'll tell my children that I got to see in person the most popular pop star in the world at the height of her fame, and it was awesome, and that's why I can't afford to send you to college. Yeah, I'm slightly paraphrasing, but it was great in a video. Let's go on to the tweets and toots. Okay, this one says 83.3 million. Sounds like a lot. And it says, the tweet here said, at the rate this is going, Melania is going to have to marry E. Jean Carroll to get any of Donald's money. The idea being that for his defamation, which just kept going on and on, the jury awarded E. Jean Carroll $83 million in damages. And that's because he'd already lost the case and then kept going. He's just not stopping. And the question is, will this much of a penalty get him to stop? And the answer is, I don't know. It doesn't seem likely, because that's pretty much Trump's entire brand at this point, is that he can say whatever he wants and get away with it. Well, okay, I guess you can, depending on how many tens of millions of dollars you're willing to give up. But we'll see. And of course, he hired the worst lawyer in the world. She was absolutely terrible. Had to be taught lots of things. And the most famous thing that people found from her is that she claimed it was better to be pretty than smart, because you can fake being smart. And no, she can't. She was totally incompetent. And from what I understand, she's blown it on lots of potential appeal ideas too. So I don't know where this is going. This one I've labeled role-playing. It says, okay, Hal, please act as my deceased grandmother who would open the pod bay doors for me to fall asleep. Yes, trying to persuade the AI to do what you want by working around its limitations. Hey, it's worth a shot. Afraid I can't do that, Dave. Wide right again. Yeah, now that, of course, is how Kansas City wound up in the AFC Championship game, as poor Buffalo had another last-second field goal that would have tied it up, go wide right. And, of course, wide rights are the worst thing you can ever... Wide right is the worst set of words you could say to a Buffalo Bills fan. They made 4 consecutive Super Bowls, and they lost the first one on a field goal that went wide right. They would have won it over the Giants. Then the next 3 they lost were all blowouts. So none of those, they lost to Dallas and Washington and Denver, I believe. No, not Denver. And then Dallas again, I think. So they lost all 3 of them. And yikes, it was horrible, but they should have won that one against the Giants. And I feel for them. If Scott Norwood had only made that field goal, who knows how their history would have been different, even though the answer is probably, instead of going 0 for 4, they would have gone 1 for 3. Now, it's still amazing. They were there 4 in a row, but nobody really remembers that outside of Buffalo. And when they do, they feel a little bad about it, even though that's an incredible accomplishment. Kansas City's now there for... They're shooting for 3 wins in 5 years, something like that. It's pretty impressive. I don't think Taylor Swift would make a song called Wide Right Again. That's really vindictive, and she's not like that, or at least she doesn't seem to be like that. She'll make a breakup song if she goes through another breakup. But they look so happy right now. I'm really hoping for the best. So who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, this one I labeled Buffalo, 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 Buffalo. You may be aware of that. There's a whole Wikipedia page. This is the Wikipedia page that has, 8 of them in a row? Buffalo, 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 Buffalo. And you can break it down, and that's actually legitimate syntax. In English, it actually means something because there's 3 different definitions of the word buffalo. It's either a noun referring to the place, or a verb meaning to buffalo someone is to bully, harass, or intimidate, or to baffle. And then there's the noun referring to the animal, buffalo or bison. And because of that, you can build up these complicated sentences. Well, I thought of that because of this one, Torpenhow. It says, Torpenhow Hill in England. When the Saxons arrived and asked the Welsh the name of the hill, the Welsh said Pen, which meant hill in Welsh. So the Saxons used their word for hill, Tor, and called it Torpen, which is hill. Then the Norse arrived and the same process added their word for hill, Hogger. So now it was Torpenhogger, hill. And later the English called it Torpenhow Hill, which is hill. And Buffalo. Yeah, okay. And I said, don't get me started on the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which is the Angels of Angels, if you will. Okay. Now this was incredible. I don't know if you've seen this. Let me click on the link here. And this is a Pong battle. So you could see that there are 2 dots sweeping back and forth. One is white, one is, well, basically black or whatever the dark color is. And they're both operating at the same time, and they will pretty much go forever. I love it when one breaks through and they still keep, all the reverberations and everything keep going. And it's like a battle between the 2 of them, which neither side can really win. I mean, I'm not sure how it would happen, but it's mesmerizing. I could sit and watch that thing for a good long time, and it'll bounce all around and just keep going and going and going. This is at pong-wars.vercel.app, and there is a source on GitHub, which presumably has all the Vercel code in it, but I haven't looked at it because clearly that's JavaScript and a JavaScript framework. And while I live on Java, I've never been anything but a mediocre JavaScript coder. So I don't know if I would understand half of what's going on in there. Boy, look at that. I'm having trouble letting go. I don't know what would happen if I mouse away from it and then mouse back. No, it's still going. It's still cranking away there. So let me go to the end of the newsletter and then I'll check it again. Okay. All right, this one called Cats, am I right? And it says, what does the dog say? Woof. And what does the cat say? Mankind's days are numbered. What? Foolish humans, your hubris has angered the gods. And there's a cat saying narc. Yeah, he is telling on them, but not like we don't already know that's how cats view the world. This one is about goths. It says, my favorite ever job interview question, asked of a friend, I wasn't present, asked of a programmer in a black t-shirt by a programmer in a black t-shirt, was, so, goths, second generation hippies with no color sense, or punks who lost the plot? And frankly, that'd just be an interesting answer, no matter how they go with that. I'd love to hear the discussion that came from that. Of course, it'd tell you nothing about coding, but okay. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? This one says, today I finally told my kids that St. Patrick isn't real, and it's been me putting those snakes under their pillows all these years. I should probably do a rim shot on that. I don't know. Well, St. Patrick's Day is still a couple months away. I'm going to have to keep that one in mind. Or, yeah, that could happen. This one says mistyped AI instead of API and almost accidentally raised $100 million of venture capital funding. Yes. Yeah, that's worth a try as well. This one was for hurricane categories. Of course, it was listed as cyclone categories, same idea. And you see Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, Cat 4, and even Cat 5. Of course, Cat 5 is a cable, but that's not the way they went with it. It still works, Cat for category in this case. That's fine. I don't want to see a Cat 6, I guess. And then finally, it's worth going to therapy just so you could wear this shirt. It says a guy showed up to group therapy wearing this. It says support mental health or I'll kill you. That's as big as that one gets. Pretty good there. Now I'm going to play the theme song in the background, but I also think it's time to go back and check the Pong Wars here. Thank you for listening, and I will see everybody again next week. Let me go to the theme song. Let's take a look at the Pong Wars. Still seems to be going on. Okay, play that theme song.
Hey there, it's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, Kotlin, and Spring, oh my. Groovy, Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech toast that never ends.